What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Singles, Married, and Family with Pastor Harold, and another great conversation on all things parenting. And today, we're gonna talk about how to deal with your kids being glued to their phones or glued to technology in general. Now, this is a huge problem for many parents these days because our kids are growing up in a world that has more and more technology every day. I remember when I was a kid, we had one television in the house. No cell phones. Video games were only played at an arcade or at a friend's house. And the only way you could really connect with someone was by picking up the phone and calling them. These days, it seems like kids are spending more time with their phones than they are with us. So, if you're looking to find out how to get your kids off their phones and how to improve the relationship with your kids, then make sure you watch this episode until the very end and get ready to take some notes. Here are 6 tips on how to deal with your kids being glued to their phones. Number 1. Put yourself in their shoes. Now, before you can really do anything to help your kids spend less time on their phones, you have to understand why they're spending so much time on their phones in the first place. So put yourself in their shoes and think about what makes you want to spend more time on your phone. You probably already know the answer to this. It's probably because there's a lot of fun stuff to do on there. They probably play video games on there. They might have their friends on there. They might scroll through social media. There could be a bunch of different reasons why you want to spend more time on your phone. But once you figure out why your kids want to spend so much time on their phones, you can come up with a game plan on how to pull them away from those phones. Number 2. Set a good example. Kids are just like little sponges. They absorb everything that we do. So, if you want your kids to stop spending so much time on their phones, then set a good example and show them how it's done. Show them that it's possible to live a happy and healthy life without spending too much time on your phone. Don't use your phone as a distraction whenever you're trying to spend time with your kids. And instead of mindlessly scrolling through Facebook when you could be playing with your kids, put your phone down and engage with your kids. When you set a good example and show your kids that you don't need a phone to be happy, then they'll follow in your footsteps and they'll spend less time on their phones too. Number 3. Create tech-free zones. One of the best ways to get your kids off their phones is to create tech-free zones around the house. A great place to start is the dinner table. The dinner table should be a place where the whole family comes together and talks about their day. It's a place where we share stories and laughter, and it's definitely not a place for phones. So make your dinner table a tech-free zone. And even if your kids don't like it at first, stick to your guns and don't allow them to use their phones during dinner. Another great place to create a tech-free zone is in your child's bedroom. Bedrooms should be places where kids go to relax and sleep, not play video games or scroll through TikTok. So set the ground rules that no phones are allowed in the bedroom after a certain hour. You can also go as far as making the entire house a tech-free zone during certain hours. For example, maybe from 8 p.m. to 9 a.m. every day, nobody in the house is allowed to use any type of technology. Instead, we use that time to do other activities like read a book, write in a journal, or have a conversation with someone in the house. If you stick to these tech-free zones and enforce them consistently, your kids will eventually understand that phones aren't allowed in these areas, and they'll be more likely to put their phones down and engage in other activities. Number 4. Give them an alternative. One of the biggest mistakes you can make as a parent is taking something away from your kids without giving them an alternative. For example, if you take away your kids' phones, but you don't give them an alternative, they're probably just going to go to a friend's house and use their phone. So, if you want your kids to spend less time on their phones, then give them an alternative. Give them something else that they can do during their free time that doesn't involve a screen. This could be something like playing a board game with the family, going outside and playing a sport, reading a book, or learning a new skill like coding or playing an instrument. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's not involving a screen. So, if you give your kids an alternative activity that they can do instead of using their phones, then they'll be more likely to put the phones down and engage in other activities. No. 5. Use technology to your advantage. Now this might seem counterintuitive, but it's actually one of the best ways to get your kids off their phones, is to use technology to your advantage. There are a ton of apps and software programs that you can use to monitor your kids' phone usage and even block certain apps or websites. So use these apps to your advantage. For example, if your kid is spending too much time on TikTok, then download a software program that blocks access to TikTok. Or if your kid is playing too many video games on their phone, then create a schedule for the video games. That way your kids will be more likely to stick to a schedule and not play video games all day. You can also use technology to your advantage by getting your kids involved in a screen-free hobby that involves technology like coding. There are a ton of resources online that can teach your kids how to code, and this is a great way for your kids to learn a valuable skill while also staying away from social media and other apps that might be harmful to them. Number 6. Have an open conversation. Last but certainly not least, one of the best ways to get your kids off their phones is to have an open conversation with them about the dangers of too much screen time. Sit them down. Explain to them why it's important to spend less time on their phones and ask them what you can do to help them achieve that goal. Make sure they know that you're not trying to take away their phones completely, but rather help them find a balance between phone usage and other activities. Let them know that you're here to support them and that you're willing to work with them to find solutions that work for everyone. If you have an open and honest conversation with your kids about their phone usage, then they'll be more likely to listen to you and make changes when needed. Alright, guys, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and if you found this video helpful, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up button, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post new videos every single week on singles, relationships, marriage, family, and all things parenting. So, if this is something you're interested in, hit that subscribe button and join the family. And as always, I'll see you next time.